everyone, and welcome to the HUD OCIO learning session. I'm Dr. Melanie Cohen. Today's topic is design thinking, rethinking how we think. In its simplest form, design thinking is a process of creating new and innovative ideas and solving problems that help people understand and develop creative ways to solve a specific issue. It is a form of solution-based or solution-focused thinking. I'll be leading today's discussion with today's panel, which includes Michael Lawyer and Laura Kunkel, both from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So why don't we get started? So when we talk about design thinking, I want to talk just a little bit about the left brain and the right brain. So when we talk about the left brain, and we can see from this chart, or this picture, it's very analytical, and you can see that by people set up in their cubicles, and it's very orderly. When we talk about the right brain, that's more about being creative, that's more about being artistic, it's more about being integrative in your thinking. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we continue on with the discussion. So let's go to the next slide. Now, I think this is something that we're all pretty familiar with when we talk about the traditional wisdom for problem solving. This is a very defined model. And as you can see, it's a very time-consuming model because each step takes quite a long time to do. And we talk about how we have to gather the data or the information. We then take time to analyze the data and the information. It takes time to formulate solutions. And then, hopefully, we're going to be implementing a solution. But when you think about it, and we'll get back and talk about it, or we can even begin our discussion now instead of doing more of a lecture. We can start the discussion now. When you talk about this, sometimes what happens is by the time you implement the solution, the problem has changed. And you need to begin to regather the data. I mean, I think we've all seen instances of this, haven't we?
Absolutely, and I've seen it most in the organizational strategic planning, where this kind of a process to fully roll out through a multi-level large government organization can take longer than the administration is in place. Right. We don't have time to work this way on many of the challenges that we face as a government anymore.
That's right, that's right. And even if you're talking about very large problems, even if we use this model, which is the model we use in our small organizational units, this all takes time. And then what happens is there's emergencies and other situations that arise during that time period, and your initial problem has changed. And then what ends up happening is we've solved a problem we no longer have.
And because this takes so much time, those emergency situations, we don't use this model anyways. We have to have a secondary way of making things happen, which ends up hopefully being better for the consumer.
Right, exactly. So let's talk a little bit then about what design thinking is. So what is design thinking? This is something that's not so necessarily new, and I think we do it in a lot of different small pockets in organizations. We just don't call it design thinking. But if we take a look at the definition, and you can see that on the slide, it's the ability to combine empathy, which I'm not sure we do a lot of times, and problem solving, for the context of the problem. And then, this definition is so full of information. A lot of times we don't even look at the context of the problem. I've highlighted some of the key words in here so people could focus on it, but even focusing on the entirety of the problem is not done a lot of times. We focus on a small piece that needs immediate resolution, but we don't focus on the big picture. The other part about it is the creativity and the generation of insights and solutions. Oftentimes, I have found, and I have read, and I'm sure you've experienced also, we call the same people to solve every problem. And we don't get all of that insight that we can by including more and more people. And then the third part of this is rationality to analyze the fit and solution to the context. Sometimes what happens is, I think a lot of times, because this discussion really it's design thinking, but it's focused on problem solving, is that we have a quick fix, very quick fix, but we don't really think about the problem in its grand scheme. And so what ends up happening is we have a quick fix, we solve a portion of a problem, but the real root of the problem really exists because we haven't analyzed it thoroughly enough. I mean, have you experienced those things?
Absolutely. And I think the word that I really want to zoom in on here is empathy. Right. And that's one of the other big flaws in the sort of traditional model is empathy is really hard to reduce to data because data is always an abstraction. And empathy is about the whole experience of the person. And that's where we end up developing the wrong solutions for folks.
That's right.
Because we don't absorb the whole experience, we just absorb the parts we can measure.
Right.
And I'm a huge fan of data. I'm never going to say throw away the data. I love the data.
Right.
But to interpret the data correctly requires empathy. And that's one of the things that I love about design is it gives you the time and the space and the process to really get to build empathy for the people you're solving the problem for in a way that just gathering the data and running the numbers doesn't always get you.
Right.
And I'd add that these short-term problems, that getting a quick solution back isn't a bad thing. It's bad when it's the only thing. That we have to have both a short-term and a long-term solution. I think this is the problem, and here's a solution that may work, but here's the root of the problem, and how can we work towards fixing that?
Well, you know what's really important about that is something you said earlier about getting different players to the table. Because building empathy is hard and it takes time. So you've got to find the people who are naturally in that group and who are impacted by that problem and get them to the table to be making the solution. And that's something that we don't do nearly often enough. We go out and we interview them and we survey them and we think we understand it.
Or we sit up here with our degrees and our jackets and we think that we understand what it's like to be in their situation. Or that's something we learned with the election, that we need to ask the people what kind of solution they want to see rather than assuming that we understand where they're coming from.
And you know what I'm going to do just for a second is talk about what the definition of empathy is. So a lot of people confuse empathy and sympathy. And so empathy is actually putting yourself in that person's place.
Absolutely.
So I just want to make sure that we all understand as we go forward, and particularly for our internet audience, when we're talking about empathy for the context, we're talking about human base. So we're talking about putting yourself in that person's place and what sort of solution would they want to see to the problem. Not what kind of solution you want to impose on the problem, but what would they want to see for the problem. And I think that's such a key point in design thinking, and I think that that's something that's not done a lot in general problem solving in organizations.
I have some examples. I come from a social work background, and before I came to HUD, was working inside my office was in a homelessness shelter. And so even though I was working on these macro ideas, I was meeting people face to face who were going through these problems. And something that I really love that we do here at HUD is that every continuum of care is required to have at least one person experiencing homelessness on their board of directors, so that when they're getting together and they're making decisions about how the funding that they receive through our grants is used in their local community, they have a say and can share from their own personal experience.
Right, that's fantastic. Michael, you had something?
Oh, this is one of the things that I love most about design and what it's taught me in terms of being a better person, not just a better employee. I have been known to occasionally think people are making stupid decisions. And what design thinking teaches me to do is to say, very few people are stupid on purpose. They're making what they believe is the right decision based on their context and their circumstance. And every time I think they're making a stupid decision, it's really me not understanding why that decision makes sense in their context. That's what makes design so powerful, is it makes you get that context so you can see why it might be the right decision for them to make, given the environment they're presented.
And that's a terrific point. That's really a great point. So let's go to the next slide. The next slide is also just a little bit more talking about what design thinking is. It's the ideas that we're really discussing here. The first part is the empathy, which is the understanding of putting yourself in that person's place. That in itself is very hard. That's not an easy process to do. Then, of course, it's defining the problem. And defining it and redefining it and understanding it, understanding what the context is. Then you come up with ideas. So ideate is just a very fancy word for brainstorming. But what you're doing is you're coming up with alternative solutions. Now, the important part about this is you have different people in the room than your normal people solving each and every problem. So you're coming up with different ideas than you might normally come up with. Because when you continually tap the same people, you shouldn't be surprised when you get the same ideas. So by including different people, you're coming up with different ideas. Then you begin to prototype. You kind of test those ideas out, see if they work, and then you move to the real test phase of it where you actually begin to implement those things. But the key piece of this slide, and I just want you to focus on the slide for a minute, is the fact that it is an iterative process. It's not that same waterfall that we just saw before, which you go from one phase to the next phase to the next phase, but you're continually evolving what even the question and the context and the problem is, because no matter what you're doing, problem solving takes time.
Can I disagree with you for a moment?
You could. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, of course,
Well,
go ahead.
because you said the key is testing, and I think we do actually agree, but I really want to hone in on the prototyping phase.
Okay, sure.
Because that, I think, is what makes design thinking really unique.
You have to have something to test.
And you have to have something to test,
Right.
but you have to have something that you know isn't complete. Because
Yes,
too often we
that's
go
right.
out with the complete answer and we
Yeah.
say, "Hey, look, I'm right. See how smart I am?" And the people who
Yeah.
we're testing with can get really intimidated by that. And
That's
you can
right.
really lose valuable feedback, especially for a world when you're dealing with a customer base and an audience that you don't fully understand. Going out with something that you know is broken and incomplete is one of the hardest things to do in the government environment.
Right.
But developing that skill of going out and saying, this is a barely functional solution that I know is wrong somewhere, tell me which parts of it are wrong, is the key to getting your
Right.
ideas better.
That's
We
exactly
never
right.
ask, tell me how I'm wrong often enough.
I can't emphasize that point enough. That's exactly right. That's the part we don't do. Is that the prototyping is often the thing that's not done. It's what ends up being done is we kind of have a solution that we go out with, and we're shocked when it doesn't work.
I think
right?
as the government, we're scared. I mean, we have this promise to the taxpayers that to use their money well, and we don't want to appear as if we're unsure or have a product we're not confident about.
Except that there are places in the government where we do it right. I mean, this is like the whole argument behind DARPA is we're going to be wrong often, and that's going to produce the best stuff that comes forward.
Right.
And all of our advanced technology, all of our science stuff that's really pioneering is based on
very
being
true.
wrong.
Right.
It's when we get it back to the policy and implementation and the kind of the things that many of us do every day, we forget that we only got this far by being wrong regularly. And now we have to pretend we know everything. And that's what I think design frees us from.
Right, that's a terrific point. So let's talk a little bit more about it. If we take a look at the next slide, and so again, what is design thinking anyway? So when we look at the way we speak, and I think language is so pivotal here. I think it's just so important because if we look at the way we talk, when we're in meetings, don't we talk about problem solving? We use those words, problem solving. We don't use the words problem framing because problem framing means we need to understand the problem first. Problem solving is I'm giving you the problem, solve it.
And
I can tell you want to jump in. Okay, go right ahead. jump
Quite
in.
frequently, what we actually mean when we say problem solving is, sir, how would you like this problem solved? This is one of the things that I get into about even the very way we've laid out our conference rooms. We don't have spaces to do design. We have tables designed for the important person to come and sit at the designated important spot. We all can share ideas for a minute, and then they weigh in a judgment on what the correct answer is. That's not problem solving.
Right.
That's listening to the most important person in the room, which is actually really unfair to them to expect them to be the expert on everything that faces our organization.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, couldn't agree with you more. And it's about, and I've spoken about this on other learning sessions where the solution is often inherent in the discussion of the problem. So when a problem is presented, the solution in a way is given to you also,
Yep.
and you have this team of people to come up with a way to implement it. That's not truly problem solving because you haven't even discussed the solution. I mean, you haven't really haven't fully fleshed out the problem before you've developed a solution. You know, I love the idea of the conference room though, and that gets to a lot of this under the engineering, which is all about structure. And it's all about already having templates in place. And it's about having, you've already got a paradigm set, right? Now, what would happen in organizations if we had circular conference tables, right? And we do have organizations where the head of that organization does not necessarily sit at the head of the table. That tells you a lot about that person too.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
they sit at a different seat. Everybody knows which seat is their seat.
Right, but if you had circular tables, and if you had actually whole different setups,
And mobile tables where things get shifted around. And,
exactly. So when we look at the slide again and we look at the engineering part, that's the way we talk today. You know, we talk about developing blueprints. How often do we hear that in organizations? We talk about, you know, here's a template, fill it out, right? You have to make your issues fit into a pre-established template. We talk about having the established procedures, okay, which we don't usually, you know, not adhere to. But when we go to the other side of this chart, where we're on the designing side, where we're talking about problem framing, I don't know that I've actually been in many meetings where someone presents that sort of language. You know, it's usually here's the problem, not let's figure out exactly what the problem is before we run off to try to solve it. It's all about paradigm, the design part is all about paradigm shifting. Let's move away from the existing. Let's not be afraid to move away from the existing. Let's experiment with some ideas and try to move away from the existing. So paradigm shifting is key here. And another key piece of it also, I think, is this whole idea of it's not about blueprints, but it's about creating something new. And I think that's a lot of the essence of design thinking also, is the creative process. And so before we get to the next slide, we can talk a little bit, and the next slide is a little bit similar to this, but why don't we talk a little bit about the creative process? Because that somehow we don't see a lot in organizations either. So if you have examples
I think
where
we
that
do
is,
see it, we just don't call it that. Like what you said with design thinking. I mean, how many
Right.
times do we hear the phrase, we're building the plane as we're flying it? Why is that a bad thing?
Well,
and you know what? It's not a bad thing. It's not, but it's couched as if it's horrible. It's couched as
Absolutely.
if it's horrible because you don't have a clear beginning and a clear ending. You know, and the clear ending is the solution. You know, changing as you're moving on the tracks is, you know, a little bit different than flying the plane or building it there or whatever, but it's the same kind of thing. You're still moving. That's the idea of design thinking. You're moving forward, changes are occurring, and you're still changing as you're going along through that whole process. And there's nothing really wrong with that.
Well, I think that's actually one of the big challenges of it is we get accused of shifting the goalposts mid-project when really what we're doing is dialing in more on what our customer needs. And it really does
Right.
become a language issue.
Right.
And you know, you open yourself up to a little bit of blowback when you say, "Hey, my first approach was wrong. My
Right.
second approach will be better." Somebody's going to say, "Well, if your first idea was wrong, why should I think your second one's any better? I'm going to go with somebody else to run the project." And I think that's a
different
change
issue
we've got to
altogether.
take.
But that's a different. That's not a design issue problem. That's a different problem altogether. That's a problem of if you haven't given me what I wanted the first time, I'm sort of moving you aside and I'm moving to the next person. That's a whole cultural, organizational, behavioral leadership problem that's a little bit separate from this. But I understand what you're saying. It's related to this. It's related in the way of let's get new ideas, let's get different ideas. Let's not be afraid to fail when we try to solve problems because you know what? We're not going to be right every single time. So we need to be in an open sort of environment where risk is inherent in this is accepted.
There's actually some things that are happening at some of the more progressive companies are putting failure ratios into their metrics and saying if X number of your projects haven't failed or haven't been the right idea initially, and you know, X is small, we're not saying 90%, we're saying 9, 5%,
Right.
but that you haven't been pushing things far enough. And if you're not working up to that edge, you're not doing your job.
Right.
But that's part of the systems and the culture that we need to put behind it to support this kind of thinking. And making sure your employees know it's really okay to take those risks.
Right.
And I know this isn't the EVS section, but there are questions in many of the workplace surveys that we have about that kind of thing and about how supported staff feel to take those kinds of risks.
Right, to take risks and to be creative. Those are specific questions in the EVS. And so this is an excellent way. And you can do it in small, you don't have to do, organization-wide all at one time, but if you do it in, as I've always said in the show, take things in small pockets within your own little team, within your own organization, and try out these ideas, because we can only make progress step by step. And if we can begin to make progress in our own small environments, that kind of can carry forward. So let's go to the next one. The next one is, how do we bridge those gaps? And so, again, this is the whole idea of analysis and synthesis. And so when we think about it, it's another way of really looking at some of the other charts. But when we talk about, and again, this is part of language also, we talk about, let's be logical, right? Let's be logical in the way we're thinking about something. I hear that often in meetings. Let's be logical in the way we do it. Let's not about being intuitive, and thinking through everything and understanding the context, but the analysis part, the logic, that all goes back to the waterfall model.
I am all in favor of being logical, but let's remember Spock was number 2 and Captain Kirk was the captain. That you can be as logical as you want, but that's not how you drive change in the organization. The logic is important for implementing. But
Yes.
it's the synthesis, and it's that empathy connection helps you decide which way to go. Then you turn it over to the logic and the engineering to do the implementing once you figured that out. That's the kind of paradigm shift that we haven't always made, because we
Exactly.
feel like the synthesis is somebody else's job. We're just here to take orders, and that's not the world we live in anymore.
Right, exactly. And when we look on the other side of the chart, if we can go to the slide again, when we look on the other side where it says think through doing, that's the whole idea of what we just talked about, building the plane as we're flying, putting the tracks down as the train is on the tracks, or, we've used a lot of different metaphors, but it's the idea of it's not static. I think that's the message I would like to get across, if nothing else, is that design thinking is not a static process. Analytical thinking, much more of a static process.
Analytical thinking requires a stable environment, because
Right.
the data you collected at the beginning has to still be valid at the end.
Right.
If your environment is changing faster than your data, you don't have time to use that process.
Right, exactly. Before we move to the next one, are there examples that maybe we can talk about in small pockets that you've used some of the design thinking methodologies for the audience, so that they can understand that, maybe they're using it too and they just don't realize it?
I think one of the most important things we did was in our work with employee engagement. As you all know, that was a very big drive over the last couple of years to work on employee engagement. And we got a great set of data back from the EVS, and we were out talking with employees. But what we discovered actually drove change was not handing people spreadsheets saying, if you could get question number 37 to come up 3 points, that'd be great, thanks.
Right.
It was getting people in a room to talk about it. And what we always said is the purpose of the data is to drive the conversation, because that let us get to the empathy point. Mm-hmm. So we'd throw the data on the table and say, okay, now that there's 12 of us in the room experiencing this every day, talk about it, tell us what that really looks like in a day-to-day way. That let us build the empathy that we could take back to management and say, here's where your people are really at. Here's the kind of actions they're actually asking for. And it turned it into an action-focused environment. And we were really clear that it was going to have to be iterative. This is what they asked for today. That will not be what keeps them engaged all year long. But it's going to be what tells them you listened to them and you heard them and you want to keep building the trust and relationship so that you can do more next month and next quarter.
Right. And I think the iterative part is really the key.
Huge.
That's huge, because a lot of times we don't have that in problem solving. Mm-hmm. We have the problem, we have the solution, we have the next problem, we have the solution. And then the problem one somehow morphs, and we're resolving that, and that's how it kind of goes along the path.
And sometimes we can't solve the problem.
Right.
That we're talking about these as if they're clean, and we go through the process and then we fold it off, and there was that. But
Right.
but really, the consumer is not always going to get everything they want, especially when you ideally have multiple people with multiple opinions about how things should be done.
Right.
What do we do? How we engage them, how we incorporate their feedback, how we let them know that they're listened to, will still leave them feeling like they were heard and they had a voice in the final product, even if it wasn't the one they chose.
Right. Right, it's the incorporating the people, it's the collaborating, and it's the participating.
Well, I mean, and here's one of the core issues. People don't do stuff they don't want to do. How many times have you been assigned a task that you hate, and so you put it off until Friday, and then there was a meeting, and then a friend wanted coffee, and then you had to get home early to pick up your kids, and you don't want to do it on the weekend, and then the deadline slips, and you hope it just kind of goes away. Right. That happens all the time. Or your employees do that because you are, of course, perfectly productive all the time. But that part of what design thinking helps us do is shape these problems in a way that people actually want to solve them. And that means involving them, getting them to describe the problem in a way they're excited about working on. Without that, you're never going to implement the solution. Even if it's right, you're still not going to get the energy and the effort you need to implement it. One of the things that we think about a lot is green buildings and building things that are sustainable and will last and all of the rest. One of the best commentators I ever read on it said, the best way to make a building green and good for the world is to make it lovable and beautiful. Because if people actually like the building, they'll take care of it. And you can put all the solar panels on the roof you want, everything else on it you want. If nobody maintains it and they tear the thing down in 15 years to build a new one, you've blown all that energy savings, all that carbon, all of that everything. Because it wasn't a solution that people loved. It's got to be something that people actually want.
Well, you have
and
to
are willing
know
to
that
participate.
they want it, though. You have to know that they want it. You have to ask them what it is that they want.
And you have to have them help build it.
That's the human-based piece of design thinking, and that's the empathy piece, and that's the piece that sometimes is missing.
Well, and it's the IKEA effect. There are great studies on this, that if you take the exact same bookshelf from IKEA, one person gets it pre-built, one person has to build their own, they empirically value the one that they had a hand in creating themselves more. They will pay more for the thing they built themselves, even though it's objectively worse, because you always lose a bolt and can't get the thing to work. Right. But people value and care about solutions they've had a hand in.
Right.
And that's what's huge about bringing them to the table in design, is you get the implementation power from people being a part of it and wanting to see it succeed.
This is reminding me of a pilot that Michael and I worked on, several years ago now, but has now become part of the GovConnect coming out of OPM. We did a pilot here at HUD where we got together people that had generally high engagement scores, but admitted that they had some free time during the work week. And rather than telling them which problems we wanted them to solve, they came together, formed their own teams around different ideas they'd had while doing the rest of their work. So some of them, like the HUD Resource Locator app that came out of a guy who sat in the office and got calls from a woman who needed a place to stay tonight, and all he had was a printout of addresses and names to call. Now, by getting people together who experienced that problem, who worked with those people firsthand, they got to develop the solution, which is now a HUD app that anybody can download and see where HUD assisted housing is near them. Or even the woman who kept saying for years, why doesn't HUD do things that way? Just giving her the time, the ability, the empowerment to look into that problem that she identified herself, something she didn't understand, to find out the solution is this regulation over there. She went away thinking, okay, now I understand why things work that way, and I support my organization.
Well, interestingly, it's pretty obvious. The person closest to the problem knows it best. But a lot of times we don't involve the person closest to the problem. We try to think we understand the problem from afar and then impose, and I don't really like that word either, but sort of impose that solution on that person's problem and without involving that person. And then we're sometimes surprised that that doesn't work, right? I mean, I think we've all seen that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So let's go to the next one, because the next slide's going to sum up in a very basic way what we've just been talking about. So what is design thinking? I can tell you what it's not. Problem solution. It's not a simple problem, have a solution, say goodbye to it and move on. It's not problem solution moving simultaneously on the same path. It's this iterative process of fully understanding the problem, understanding the context, having empathy, creating prototypes, And I love the part where you emphasize the prototypes, because I think I didn't do that piece of it justice, so I appreciate that. Coming up with a solution, but then rethinking the whole thing, because you know what? When we really get right down to it, a lot of big problems are never really completely solved.
When we talk about this in IT, I work for the Office of the Chief Information Officer, we call it Agile.
Right. Right, exactly. And when you're talking about, a lot of times design thinking is used in what are called wicked problems, which don't actually have solutions. You know, when you're talking about healthcare issues, or, you know, big societal issues. There is not a simple, this is the problem, this is the solution. You constantly have to continue to re-examine it. And by using the principles of design thinking, it helps you rethink, and that's why this is rethinking how we think, rethink through the problem, which I think is really important, because I don't believe we give enough credit to understanding the full problem.
Well, I think that's one of the places where we don't give enough credit to how important creativity is in the work we do. You know, when we say creative, we think maybe a painter in a studio making a painting by themselves, or if we want to go a little bit bigger, we think about like a movie crew bringing together a couple of hundred people to create 2 hours of film that tells a story. But we're creating an entire society. And when we come up against those wicked problems, creating solutions that can solve that is a profoundly creative act. And figuring out how to bring together not hundreds, but thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, aligning systems, aligning the work, putting the right incentives out there, putting the right regulations out there that shape the space so that these problems can actually be solved, is deeply creative work. You know, and I actually did a lot of art stuff in undergrad, and I'm still in touch with some of those folks. They're like, man, you went square, you're a suit. I'm like, no, I'm doing something more creative every day than I ever did in the studio, as we try and figure out how we're actually going to build the America of the future together.
And in some ways, that America, this government, this test of democracy is the type of agile work that we're talking about, that there was a constitution, and over years we've gotten people together that ideally are representing the population, and adding to it and changing it and fixing this and hiring this new office over there to keep making something better and better.
It's never a perfect union. It's always a more perfect union, and more perfect next time, and more perfect the time after that.
That's right. That's right. Even if we apply those same kind of ideas about the more perfect, even to our organizations. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really kind of the key thing. So let's do this, because I, again, can kind of try to sum it up on one slide. So what have we been talking about? So we're talking about being collaborative, right? The key piece of being collaborative, though, different and complementary experience. How often do we pull people in who have different experience? Again, we pull the same people in, and oftentimes it's the same people. They don't even have complementary experience. They're the people that you like and trust.
Are you saying I can't keep being a panelist on the show?
You can keep being a panelist.
You need the people that are easy to call, and we're going to say yes to you. You need the people that have experience in that organization, or have gone through this at the last disaster.
But you also need the different. You need different. You know, maybe it wasn't last month, it might have been a month before, but one of the other learning sessions, what they did was they have these different groups of people that come in to coach each other from grades 4 to SES, offering all different perspectives. And that's what I'm talking about here in being collaborative. Anyone can learn something from anyone else. You have to be open and willing to be able to do that, right? And so that's having different and complementary experience. If you have an organizational problem, why not open it up to whoever wants to help you solve that problem, instead of saying, okay, let's have another staff meeting and here's our problem and let's figure out how to solve it. You know, open it up wider.
There's actually a great resource on this. The book is called Group Genius by Keith Sawyer. And what he really gets into is this concept of a Q ratio. And this is based on a kind of famous study where they looked at Broadway plays, because every Broadway play has a certain set of roles. You got to have the choreographer and the director and all of that. And they analyzed how many of those people were the same people. that either you had your group of 6 people who you worked with, or you had your all new people. And they had revenue from the shows so that they could measure what was successful and what wasn't. And they found out that if you kept putting the same people in the room, revenue started to decline fairly predictably over time. The first one's a hit, the second one sells, the third sequel is not quite so good. You know, I mean, we've all seen the Rocky movies, it falls apart at the end. But if you had completely different people in the room, they didn't know how to work together, and they never produced a hit. They couldn't get it started.
Right.
That there's this perfect ratio, and the details are in the book, but where you have a couple of people who work together so that they're familiar, and so that, you know, when I make somebody angry, Laura can say, oh, that's just Mike, he's doing his thing, it's okay, this is what he really meant, because we've worked together on that enough. But you've got enough new people in there that we get challenged and we get new ideas thrown at each other. And that's the key to really balancing collaboration, is that blend of familiar people who you know and new ideas at the table.
Right. You know, that's, as you talk about the Broadway shows, it makes me think a lot about TV series. As TV series go on, you know, they get a little stale after so many years.
The Simpsons is not what it was.
Okay. I'm not really a fan, but okay.
More things like Lost, everybody agrees.
But you know, a lot of shows, and it's because of the same writers, probably, right? So how is that any different in our organizations when we continue to call on the same people? And that's often what we do. We continue to call on the same people. So the idea about getting different people in. Also abductive, which is inventing new options to find better solutions to new problems. You know, our problems continue to morph because we don't actually ever really solve them using the old methods. So they continue to morph. Experimental, which is the prototyping piece. Again, I go back to excellent point bringing that out. So it's the prototyping. So you need to experiment. You know, you have to put out that solution, that potential solution, even though you know it's not perfect, because you know what, everybody can add to it and perhaps make it much better. Personal. So, you know, considering the unique context of each problem and each person, that's the empathy piece.
Oh, that's huge.
Really, that's huge, and that's a piece that's not often really thought about, you know. And a lot of times that's not thought about, and organizations face this every day, I think, is in reorganizations. There are constant reorganizations going on, and, you know, it's not moving boxes, and it's not moving, you know, just functions. You're affecting the way people value themselves in organizations, and when you don't include them, that's when things begin to go awry.
This is reminding me, sorry, of the
go ahead.
Of like the phased retirement program that HUD just launched. The idea of bringing somebody in to learn and be the successor from their mentor. And if we can get people on board in a situation where they're learning from that person, then the person who's leaving doesn't feel like, oh, they just replaced me, I didn't mean anything to this organization, but have even yet another opportunity to give back and invest in that new person.
Well, and I think that this is one of the areas where we have a really big cultural challenge, because fair and equal are not the same thing. But here in the government, we frequently say, because we're very invested in justice, we're very invested in fairness. Those are all good things. I'm not opposed to any of those things, but it doesn't mean treating everybody exactly the same. It means giving everyone equal opportunity, but they're going to need different things in different places. And that's part of what making it personal is about. You know, one of the things we see is in work-life balance. It used to be that it was all about telework, and, well, somebody got more days of telework than I did, so I'm mad about that, and that was like the only way you could have work-life balance. And what we're seeing now with the research and with people pushing on this is not everybody thinks telework is the right way for work-life balance. Some people do. Some people need it. You know, other people need to leave at a certain time to be home for their kids. Other people need a different schedule altogether. It's about giving folks the options to flex to the realities of their life. And that's what making the solutions personal is we're never going to have one solution that works for every person in every place. We see this with our place-based work at HUD all the time. Kansas City needs different solutions than New York City.
Absolutely. I also work some on a project called Kinect Home, the Secretary's priority to get internet into HUD-assisted houses, K-12 families. And because it's a there's no funding. It's a partnership between these private organizations and these HUD communities that we are putting together with some nonprofits. Whenever one city has a different internet service provider or a different stakeholder that's providing digital literacy training, the success is very uneven based on the amount of resources that they've been able to gather. Part of that is because we didn't help them get enough players on board. Part of it is they didn't have people locally that were willing to put up their hands and say, I'm in and I commit and I agree with this. There's lots of reasons, and that's exactly why we do things like pilot programs to make and learn those differences, and why HUD is getting those boots on the ground in these communities.
Right, right. So let's go back to the slide for just a minute. So if we look at continuing down the integrative, which is perceiving the entire system, which is, let's look at the whole problem. You know, let's really understand the entire situation in its entire context, instead of understanding what we think we understand in a small piece. So that's also a key piece of design thinking. The other piece is about being integrative. So understanding the framing of the problem, which again, I'm not sure we always do right, and then judging possible solutions, not just coming up with, you know, the one thing that could potentially solve it, but let's have a list of options and let's try out those options and let's circle back to the problem again to make sure that those things all fit together. So I think if we can employ some of these things, even in our small little teams, you know, because we all have problems in our small little teams. We may have a team of 5 people, but that doesn't mean that group is humming. So we need to figure out how to solve problems just in that small little group. So, you know, if we employed some of these kind of things, I think we could have much smoother operation even in our teams. So let's go to the next one. The next one we'll just talk about for just a minute, which is T thinking. T-shaped thinking. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but the idea behind this, and we'll just stay on the slide for 1 second, is the idea of the vertical leg. The analytical thinking is the vertical leg. The horizontal part of the T is the intuitive, experimental, empathy. And the T part, when you talk about T thinking, it's the idea of combining all of that together. Because we've talked about analytical as if it's one separate thing. We've talked about design as if it's something completely separate. You know, we're not going to be able to change overnight. So we actually need to combine all of this together. So I'm hoping this works on the slide so you can see it a little bit bigger. But the idea is there's a whole lot of stuff that makes up that T. And when we think about the problems in our organizations and the problems that we want to solve, we want to make sure that we're focused on each and everything in there. Because oftentimes, we're only focused on the stuff that maybe somebody tells us, or we're only focused on the stuff we're interested in solving. So if we focused on the entire T, we could have all different solutions. And that's the part I want to bring out in the T.
Well, I think that's really interesting because I've always heard it defined a little bit differently, but I'm really liking your definition now.
So we'll go with mine.
Well, but the way I've heard people talk about it is that the vertical of the T is your subject matter expertise. That's the thing that you really know deeply and what you bring to the table. And I think that's exactly the perception bias problem you were just raising is if there's one thing you really know, you know, when you've got a hammer, the world's a nail. And that's where we get stuck a lot. We don't give enough credit to the broad part of the T, which is all the little bit of dabbling, I did a 2-month rotation there and I know a thing about it. I have a friend who's in that program and they told me about it one time. I think I understand some things there. That's what lets you connect out and start to see that other perspectives have value and have something to offer to this that's not in your subject matter wheelhouse.
Right.
And that's the basis of your connectability to other folks. And I think that is so huge in the way we're working these days. That, you know, it really used to be that if you were the subject matter expert, you could wait around until whatever issue it was came through clearance, and then you could weigh in and you could make your statement about whether this was or was not a good idea, and everyone had to listen. That's not always the way it works anymore.
And it also used to be that the subject matter expert meant that you had been in that job for 20 years, where now there's even...
20? 30?
I think even more emphasis on the fact that you have seen the problem from multiple angles, that you've worked from the nonprofit side, that you worked in the secretary's office on the issue, and then you worked in the program office, and that you are able to look at a problem across the board, I think is more and more important as we look at moving up and who our next leaders are going to be.
Right.
And really putting time into developing that and making that a part of your professional growth plan. The breadth of your experience, I think, is absolutely going to be huge for managing both your career personally and also being a better public servant going forward.
Right. Well, one of the things you're talking about at the horizontal is it's called lateral thinking, and so that's the idea of being more creative and involving more ideas, more people, more concepts. We do a lot of the vertical because that's easy for us. We understand it, and it's very straightforward. The lateral part is very much more complicated, and that's the part where we really are not islands. We're really not islands, and the vertical part is more of being an island.
Is it more complicated, or have we just not practiced it enough?
I think that we don't understand what the expectations are. That
Right.
it's really easy to do this straight up and down because I can check. I like to be able to check off the box and say I completed it.
Right.
I don't know how to do the breadth. I have to talk to people. I have to get out of my comfort zone. I have to, go meet somebody else. I have to bring in my volunteer experience or my personal life. It's harder because it's so fluid.
Well, and I think that's huge too, because this is something we didn't touch on in the empathy discussion earlier, is it does require some vulnerability. It does require bringing in your personal life and not just being a collection of degrees and accreditations and resume items, but a human being. We often call it human-centered design because the first step is to be really, really human with the process and all of the messiness that entails.
Right, exactly. So we could talk about the T probably for another 20 minutes, but we'll move on to the next slide, which is the box. Now,
are you going to tell us to think outside the box, Melanie?
no, well, because I don't like that phrase, but this is the situation people find themselves in a lot, and this is really the waterfall, and this is the stair-step model. This is the
way
vertical.
we've always done it.
This is the way we've always done it, and we have to get away from that. And well, unfortunately, there was no sound effect here. That when I practiced it, there was a screaming sound effect. But the idea is we need to turn that upside down. People need to be able to escape from that. And the idea is once you've escaped from that, you get other people involved and bring other people into the discussion. And you no longer have the box because you're not bound by those walls. That's the concept I wanted to bring forward here is about the box.
Well, and I think one other thing we got to remember about the box is sometimes there are people just there because they're tired. I mean, we have to do a lot of hard things.
Right.
And when you're tired and when you don't have your full energy and your full creativity to bring to a situation, you go with what you did last time because it's easier. Boom, get it done.
Right.
And part of what we got to learn how to do is to take care of each other in a way that means we're bringing that kind of energy to be creative. You can't just do that on command. You got to be supported in that.
Right, exactly. So another one of these exercises is this famous box exercise. So if I were to say, we've got the 9 dots here, let's draw 4 lines and not lift the pencil up, a lot of people are stuck because immediately they're bound to the lines of the box, right? But that's not really, in real life, in our own real lives, outside of our environment and in our environment, we need to think beyond those boundaries. And, of course, organizationally, you need to have a culture that lets you think beyond the boundaries, but let's say you have that. And we need that more and more every day. So if I say you draw 4 lines and connect every dot, people would have a little bit of a problem with that. But when you see the example, you have to go outside of the box to be able to do that. And this is just simply the idea of, and just look at the slide for a second, this is just simply the idea of let's not be bound. Let's not put ourselves in our own confinement, and let's not put ourselves in our own boxes, because a lot of people do that. because they're afraid or they're unsure or they're not in an environment that lets them think outside of that. But let's challenge those ideas. And that's really the concept I wanted to get to here. Do you want to add anything before we go on to the...
No,
okay.
I think that's right on. It's figuring out which of your constraints are real and which of your constraints you just invented is a huge, huge part of design thinking.
And a part of that is having people around you that are going to tell you when you're making things harder for yourself.
Right, exactly.
It's also part of why you bring in new folks from outside, is that they're more likely to say, why is that a rule? And sometimes it's not. You just thought it was.
Exactly, exactly. So we look at the next one. The next one is a bunch of boxes. I like this one as a depiction of, let's throw away all the boundaries that we set for ourselves, because we're the ones really who put ourselves in these boxes when you really think about it. You know, particularly in organizations, we sort of set ourselves up. This is my space. This is my office. This is my box. If you go into anybody's office, it's essentially their box, right? Or a cubicle. It's their box, and they've decorated it however they want, right? But you know what? In these other office designs, the open office, you know, and you can talk a little bit about open office if you want to, or not. But the idea of the getting away from the constraints of that, we can talk about it physically getting away from the constraints. More importantly, here we're talking about mentally getting away from the constraints.
This is one of the places where I think we don't understand our own authority often enough. And there have been situations where I've asked somebody, well, why do you do it that way? I say, well, that's what the guidance says I have to do. I say, okay, well, who wrote the guidance? He says, oh, the guy who had this job before me.
Right.
You know, we figure that. So write new guidance. Do it a different way.
Right.
It's your job now. And yes, it's process, and you can't just make stuff up. You do have to go around and check with folks. But it's a lot of we're the ones who created the constraints.
Right.
Yes, there's statutes. Yes, there's regulations. We wrote the regulations too.
Right.
These are all changeable things. It takes time. It takes work. You got to pick your battles. You got to know which ones need to be changed.
Right.
But yeah, this is what we do: is redraw these rules. That's our creative act. That is our wheelhouse.
Right.
And we don't give ourselves permission to do it nearly often enough.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. I just didn't want to get the point to be lost that I got a little nervous when you were talking about, like, oh, we don't need the cubicles. We don't need our personal stuff.
No.
Like, how do you balance that losing all restraints, but also having that safe space? And I'm guessing that it's part of who you have around you, that when you were bringing in some new folks and some people you've worked with before, that you're listening to the experiences from the last time we went through this emergency, but are still open to new ideas.
Mm-hmm. Right. I bring the boxes because we create our own boxes. You know, we have our own teams. That's kind of a box also, right? We ask the same people for solutions to problems. That's the box. The idea was really, we need to break down some of the walls of those boxes and begin to incorporate different ideas, different people, different thinking. That's the whole idea of the design thinking. You know, let's not bind ourselves in our own boxes, which is what we do every day. So let's kind of think in a different way. That's the whole idea of this, rethinking how we think. And so we'll move to the next one, which is my favorite thing of all, which is the kaleidoscope. I love the kaleidoscope. And the beauty of the kaleidoscope is that incremental change makes huge change. Right? Incremental change makes huge change. All you have to do, this is one kaleidoscope, and I got 3 different pictures out of it. I could look at these for hours, but we'll just look at 3. And so you get different pictures out of the kaleidoscope with small change. So when we think about in our organizations, what kind of huge change could we make if we added a different person to problem-solving sessions? And that's the whole idea of design thinking too, right?
And not just invite them, but let them talk. Listen to them and treat them with the same respect and authority as the person sitting in the designated seat.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
It's not just let them talk. It's encourage them to talk, support them to talk, expect them to talk, tell them you expect them to talk before you throw them in, and tell them they did a good job at talking, even if they didn't, just to keep them participating and part of it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So So that's the whole idea of the kaleidoscope. Again, we can talk about kaleidoscopes for a long time and kaleidoscope thinking, but the idea is incremental change makes huge change. And so if we think about that, again, in our everyday organizations, we can create our own change. So here we go to the empty picture frame. So if you look at the slide for just a minute, it's the idea of we can create on that white space anything we want, right? Let's not be tied to the template, to
having to match the frame.
Right, exactly. We create what we want on that white space, and we have to be able to do that, to, I think, create better organizations. Let's not be tied to the old all the time. Let's not be tied to the old templates. Let's not be tied to, problem solving, those kind of ways. Let's think about it, the frame. Let's think about the frame, because when we first went back to one of the earlier slides, we talked about problem framing, right? Not problem solutions, problem framing. So let's understand it's up to us to put in what's in that frame. So that's really the key thing with this slide. So when we're kind of getting toward the end here. We just have a couple of minutes. So I'm going to kind of sum it up a little bit. So when we talk about a few simple questions to think about when we talk about design thinking. So the first one is, what is? So what is, in the grand scheme, the problem we want to solve, right? Let's understand it. Let's understand the context. Let's understand everything that's involved with it. And let's not just focus on the tiny little bit piece of it, right? And I think even if we did nothing else from what we discussed today, if we did that one thing, I think we can create some change. The next thing is what if. Now that part is kind of looking at what are all the possible solutions? And when we think to our own organizations, do we really think about all the possible solutions to every problem? I would say probably not. But I mean, you all might have different examples of where you've thought through every possible solution. I think there needs to be potential solutions, and then they need to be tried out and worked and not immediately crossed off. Because that's what happens a lot of times too, is the potential solution A, B, C, and D, and someone looks at them and then they say, well, let's go with B.
So there's actually some fascinating research on this stuff too, because I've only ever thought through the possible solutions when someone sits down and forces me. Because the reality is, and they've validated this with various studies and such, that you come up with the same set of solutions first, and that your first 5 solutions on the list are going to be basically the same 5 for just about anybody who sits down who knows a reasonable amount about that problem. Might put them in a different order, might like one more than another, but it's not until you force yourself to get to solutions number 9, 10, 11, 12, right, you start to get truly new solutions into the mix. And when we've done facilitated brainstorming things or worked with a design lab like the one at OPM that really manages process on this, they really push you hard to get down into that list, and that you have to legitimately come up with 10 to 15 items on that list before you can start to say you've thought through all the solutions. Anytime you bring back your boss the 3 solutions, bring me back some options, and you go write down 3 things and bring them a PowerPoint that says here's your 3 solutions, right, you haven't thought it through. You got to think out 12 or 15 of them, then cross it off the list, right, and bring back the 3.
Exactly. So let me just get through the other two things, because we just have about 2 minutes left. So I'll just get through that. So what wows? It's not really wow in terms of what, like wow. It's the idea of, let's get a whole bunch of ideas going. Let's generate every idea that we can possibly come up with. Let's not marginalize when somebody comes up with something. Let's not criticize their idea. Let's hear every single thing and then begin to talk it through. And then what works? Let's do the prototype. I'm sorry, template. I got to cross the word template off my mind here.
The fences are in your own head. You're letting your own constraints and boxes define your thinking.
I have the word template on my mind because somebody asked me to fill out a template, so I'm thinking about templates. So let's do the prototyping. Let's try it. Let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't work, and let's move on to the next thing. And we have to be allowed to be able to do that. And this is, I'm going to go through this quickly, not go through it, but you have it here. It's just another model of what design thinking is all about. And it's this idea of people, business, technology, and the real innovation is that sweet spot right in the center. So that's the key piece of design thinking. So I leave with the Albert Einstein. We all know who this guy is, pretty smart fella. And a quote from him is, if you always do what you've always did, you will always get what you always got. And so we have to get away from that whole method of thinking through problems in our organizations. So with that, unfortunately, I'm going to have to wrap it up because we're out of time. But thank you very much, Michael and Laura, for being on our panel today. I appreciate it. I think we had a wonderful discussion. And for our audience who are watching, thank you very much for being with us. And please join us again for the next HUD OCIO learning session. Have a wonderful day.